Hi, everyone out there. So it's Shaya Lewis-Dermody here from the Family Law Project, and we're just going live now. So hopefully we'll get a few more people join us as we go along. And today we've got Phil Lamport from Parents Beyond Breakup and Dads in Distress. So hi, Phil. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Shaya. Thanks for having me here.
And we're just having a casual chat. You're in Melbourne today, and you're experiencing a little bit of a heat wave for Melbourne.
Oh, it's ridiculous. There's people fainting in the streets at 30 degrees. It's not quite as bad as back home in England, where people are passing out when it gets to 25. So
that's right.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully everyone will be okay. So thanks for joining us today. I thought it would be really useful to have you come on and have a chat to our audience around dads in distress in particular, because we've got a lot of male clients and a lot of men that follow our Facebook page, for example, and could really do with that extra support. And I know that the service that you guys offer is an excellent service. So yeah, thanks for joining us. And I won't give a huge intro except to say, Phil, the tagline of your service is keeping parents alive and their kids alive. So I'll let you speak perhaps around the service and why the Dads in Distress service started.
Yes, thanks, Shaya. Keeping parents alive and in their kids' lives. So really the Dads in Distress organisation began 21 years ago now, and it's a peer support service which was based around fathers that post-separation weren't seeing their children. And obviously, anybody who's got a human, bone in their body knows that that's awful. Certainly parents can relate to just how distressing that can be. And over the years we've developed, and we're Parents Beyond Breakup now. So we run Dads in Distress, Mums in Distress, and also Grandparents in Distress support services. And really, we're all about providing peer support, so people that have been through this post-separation and separation from their children, mainly in kind of helping one another get through it. Because, as you know, and as most of the people tuning in will know, that it can be a very distressing time, but it also is quite a long, drawn-out process, unfortunately, in many cases, where these people, and it does seem to be with us, particularly dads, but the trials and tribulations are exactly the same for the mothers that are not allowed to see their children post separation, and from those grandparents on both sides of the family that are also ostracized, if you like. So we're there to kind of help people get through that process.
And your service sort of started out, didn't it, as a suicide prevention service? And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that's how you continue to have a lot of your funding, is through being a suicide prevention service.
Yeah, well, that's certainly how we're primarily funded, is as suicide prevention. And just very quickly, for anybody that's listening, suicide prevention and intervention are two different things. You've got people like Lifeline, which are crisis intervention, but we're more about prevention, which can be anything. It can be just getting your life on track, just talking to your mates. But we have a more formal kind of approach to it, where we help those parents going through that separation process and that distress with practical advice. In what to do, how to get through it, and a bit of sitting around hand holding, metaphorically speaking. Generally in the dads groups we don't have a lot of physical hand holding, not making any judgments, but that's kind of what we do and how we support. It's all through peer support.
And I know one of the most common questions you get actually is what's the link, if I can put it that way, between separation and suicide. How would you answer that, or how would Dads in Distress answer that?
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm not going to kind of quote specific surveys, but I think there's anecdotally I can give an answer. People are welcome to go out and have a look at the statistics. And of course, with just common sense will tell you that separation is a really hard time for everybody involved. It's hard, for husband, for wife, for what, and whatever de factos or what have you, and certainly hard for children. It's difficult even when that separation is done amicably. So what we generally find is the people that come to us, our clients, our attendees, their separations are not amicable. They're quite the opposite in many cases. But even where they're amicable, it's hard. One of you's leaving the home, you've got to work out finances, you've got a lot more responsibility. There's working out how you're going to, care for the children, either whether there's communication or there isn't. So that leads to high levels of stress and distress, which obviously is a huge indicator of risk to suicide. That's really, like I say, common sense will tell anybody that that's the case. And certainly that's what we see in a lot of the groups. That level of desperation.
Well, I guess there's no doubt that anybody, whether it is male or female, going through a separation is potentially experiencing one of the most difficult events of their life,
Yeah, it's a major factor. And look, one of the things that we've noticed is it tends to be what would you say, sort of like an avalanche of issues all coming together. So you're not only losing your relationship, your partner, you often, in some cases, these people through, whatever disruption to their life, they can become homeless. They may have trouble maintaining a job. And of course, there's, the loss of relationship with their children. And there's a lot of uncertainty about the future. And for those, I'm going to use dads as the primary here, but for those dads, they've invested their life into being the breadwinner and the father. That's the core of their personality, and the same applies obviously to mothers. That's suddenly all taken away. So yeah, it's a hugely distressing time for people.
And it is often unexpected, isn't it? And I think even if you're the person who, for example, initiates the separation, if I can put it that way, it's still very much a time of uncertainty.
It's unfortunately, and I think there's a bit of an introduction in your book to do a blatant, publicity job. It says something like, "I did not plan to be here."
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which,
nobody plans to be there.
Right. Yeah. Who goes into a relationship, or who gets married, or who has kids with somebody, plans to have kids with somebody, going, this will probably end in a couple of years. It just doesn't.
Well, I don't think I've ever come across that, Phil, in close to 20 years as a family lawyer. I don't reckon that's ever come up.
Of course. So, and I think even when you're the instigator or the, person who decides that the relationship is over, it's still a lot of change. But particularly for the person in a reactionary mode, what we typically find, and this is, look, I'm going to jump straight into it, and this is talking to one of the really big issues that we see with the dads that turn up to the support groups, is they're in denial, they're in full defense mode, full reactionary mode. And in many cases, one partner has decided maybe 6 months, 18 months, maybe 3 years ago that the relationship is already over. And during that time, they're removing themselves emotionally, they're planning. And then all of a sudden, in the space of, a day, a minute, an hour, one of you just finds out that you've got 3 years of catching up to do. And all of that baggage is dumped on you, the logistics, the emotions, and you've got to kind of try and catch up and deal with that, and then be a sensible adult who, finds a place to live, puts together a parenting plan, works out your finances, gets a lawyer. to imagine how you can cope with that, it blows the mind. It really does.
So in terms of the dads in distress, what would sort of be the typical dad that's coming to use your service? Is it where there's high conflict, where there's only court proceedings, or a bit of a mixture, or what's your experience there?
The vast majority of the situation of the dads that come to our groups is that they are unable to see their children or have very limited contact or custody, and certainly nothing that is agreed or in writing or enforceable. So they're sort of starting on a back foot. This is not the only situation that we see, but the vast majority is fathers that are in a position where they are coming from a very underdog position as regards having a continued relationship with their children. So whether that's the extreme of that there is parental alienation, whether that's that the other parent has moved away with the children, maybe interstate, they don't know what school they're going to, where they live. Or even overseas in some cases. But it may just be that there is contested or difficult communication between the parents quite often, and they just don't know, when they're going to see their kids next, or if they're, even allowed to. So that's generally where it differs. That's the commonality, but where it differs is when they find us. And what we really see is, we got dads turning up where they know that the relationship's down the toilet. They're still, they're still cohabiting together, trying to parent. They know that the relationship is about to end, and they want to know, well, what's likely to happen? What can I do to be prepared? They're very, very well on the front foot, to kind of get ahead of it. To the opposite, where they've already been separated for 2 or 3 years. They may not have seen their children, if at all, in that time. And they are, they're just hitting the bottom of the barrel. So the issues are the same, but the level at which people kind of come into the groups is very, very different. And that's, yeah.
And how do you think it is, Phil, that sort of, is there something that people are looking for when they reach out to dads in distress? Is there sort of a common theme that you see? Is it, I'm not sure if you maybe have just answered that. Yeah.
Well, I think one of the things that, and one of the reasons why I was really keen to talk to you, going through the book, is that there's a lot of similar values and similar ideas around that, because what we find is a lot of people who contact us, call the helpline, or turn up to the support groups, what they think they want is, I need the name of a good lawyer, or can you tell me what to do? Right now, everybody's situation is different. I think you've got a Dr. Seuss quote about.
I love that. Yes. About being unique. Yes.
Yeah. And every situation is different. Every, dad that turns up is different. Their ex-partner is different. Their kids and their personalities are different. So there is no one answer to that. So people turn up and they think they need legal advice and or referral to a good lawyer. Now, they need both those things, undoubtedly, in most cases of, a contested separation. But what they're not really aware of is the support that they're going to need to get through that process. That, linking arms, being around people that have already been through it, and having their ideas heard and talked through, their personal situation. And that's kind of what they find when they come to us, is we can refer them on to local lawyers. Other dads will say, well, I've used this person, or this was the questions I asked. But they come for legal advice, if you like, or referral, but they stay for the extra support is really what we see they come for. Yeah.
And that kind of ties in nicely with what I was going to ask you next, actually, is the difference between the service that Dads in Distress offers as opposed to the support that your guys might have from family and friends or legal advice. So where does Dads in Distress sit in that overall scheme?
Yeah, the way that I nearly always, I guess, spruik what we do is we are a value add. So we are not lawyers and we're not psychologists, we're not therapists. You know, if you're in a situation where you need to seek, you know, a direct therapist, if you should be under the care of somebody to help you, you know, deal with the distress of what you're going through, you know, antidepressant medication, whatever, and of course professional legal advice and any and other services, we are additional to that. We don't replace any of those things, nor do we wish to. But we know that, look, I mean, we know for over 21 years, you know, the dads that come through the service, the parents that come through the service and come back even years later and say, you know, I wouldn't be here for my kids now. I wouldn't have ever reconnected, or it would have taken me 3 times as long. I would have made all these mistakes. Yeah, it's a value add service.
Would you mind, Phil, and I'm not sure how you're going to say no to this, to sort of share your story and how you became involved with Dads in Distress? I sort of put you on the spot there. It is hard to say no, isn't it?
I was not expecting that.
If you're not
absolutely.
comfortable with that, Phil, just generally how people do become involved with the service.
No, look, I'm totally fine with sharing my story. I separated from my kid's mum 12 years ago. And I guess one of the things that makes me so proud of the organisation and of all our volunteers, our facilitators, and of every parent that reaches out to us is that my story is actually not even that, you know, extreme. It's a really, like, why did you even need support kind of thing? You know, I feel guilty for having, you know, had to go to Dads in Distress 11 years ago. I started, you know, in the groups because my kid's mum was really great. You know, she knew how useless I was when we separated. She even gave me a cookery book as I walked out the door and was like, you know, Jamie Oliver, how 5-minute cooking, you know, so I wouldn't starve to death.
Did you use the book?
I did. Yeah. Between that and, you know, cans and beans on toast. I was pretty useless when I first separated. So, you know, she was aware of how important the children were to me and how important I was to the children. And I was very emotional. I wasn't, you know, I didn't handle it particularly well, and she was really understanding of that. So my situation was not what many who turn up to the groups would even call distressing. And yet every day that, you know, I moved to the other side of town, I stayed in a friend's spare room, slept on the floor for 18 months because I couldn't quite bring myself to realize that it actually happened and it was real and I had to move on. Every day I woke up and my kids weren't jumping on the bed. Every day I come home from work and they weren't standing there waiting to greet me at the door. That broke me. It broke me badly. And this is with weekend, you know, every weekend with my kids, access whenever I wanted, good communication with the mum, you know, support from family and friends. I found that incredibly difficult. It really smashed me. It knocked me off my feet for a long, long, long time. And so I see hundreds and hundreds of parents come through with situations dozens or hundreds of times worse than mine, and they deal with it. And I'm like, I cannot tell you the respect I have, you know, for these people. It's, I just, you know, I'm like, how would I have done that? And I wouldn't have coped without Dads in Distress in my situation. So, you know, I know the value.
So from it, and thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. I'm sorry to put you on the spot like that, Phil. From a practical perspective, and I know we spoke about this a few weeks back, and I was quite fascinated to have this conversation with you. Can you share from a practical perspective what actually happens in the Dads in Distress meeting?
Yeah, sure. So it's, I was going to make a joke about some sort of initiation ceremony there, but I'll just jump into a serious explanation. There's different ways of sort of looking at it, but what we really do is, I guess you could sort of imagine it similar to what might be something like a AA meeting type thing. So we have groups. The physical groups are for dads in distress are a circle of chairs, and the dads come in, and you've got people who might have been coming for years. You've got people who might be there for the first time. There's no appointments. There's no schedule. There's no program. So you don't have to go, well, I'm going to come along for 12 weeks, or you just turn up as and when you want to. You can come once, go, I'm not alone, I think I'm in a good spot, I've got some advice, and go off and deal with it. And that's fine. You can keep coming back for years, even after you've re-established a relationship with your kids. So first of all, it's very open and accepting to anybody. Like I say, we have the circle of chairs, and everybody comes in and they get the opportunity. We symbolically have a rock that we pass out, and whoever has the rock has the floor. Each attendee gets to tell their story, and that can be in as much or as little detail as they want. And for groups with regulars, it might just be what's happened in the last week, what have they done, the last week or two since they've been. And so the meeting is really broken down into two main parts. So it's pass the rock, share your story, then we take a bit of a break, and then you come back in, and it's more of an open discussion. So it's sharing wisdom in the room. And what we find is that from all of the different perspectives and the different personalities, we encourage people to support each other, but also to challenge one another. And I'm going to be really blunt here. Is probably what a lot of our detractors maybe would think about a dads in distress group is you're going to get upset and angry dads coming, right? And they're going to have some pretty awful ideas, and that my rights, and they want to send an awful text message response to the ex, and we're all about de-escalation. We understand, maybe you've got great reason to be angry and upset, but is that going to reconnect you with your kids? Is that going to make you a good role model? Is that going to look good and help you, move on with your life? So that's the, I suppose, the mindset or the philosophy of the group, as well as the practical way that we do it is, share your story, and then you just sit down and chat. And that's moderated by a trained facilitator in every group.
And I think you said to me previously that trained facilitators, they're often men who themselves started with Dads in Distress as a support service, and have been with your service for however long, and got to a point where they thought they could then facilitate these meetings themselves. Is that right?
Almost always, yes. Almost always, with very, very, very few exceptions, because what we found is that somebody who's been coming along to the groups and has got value themselves and is aligned with our values as an organisation. So we're not a militant, go out and burn down the courthouses type thing. And, I totally understand where people have frustrations with any and all of the systems, whether that be, child support or courts or whatever it is, right? But we're all about, well, this is what we've got. How can you work within this to get a good outcome and reconnect you with your kids? It's that simple, really. It's, you can be emotional in the room. We all get it. But what we want is for you to be able to go away and have a good plan and a good approach to building a case and building a relationship with your children. And so when we have group attendees who really get on board with that, and they realise that maybe their anger or their emotions didn't help them. And look, we've got plenty of guys who, they'll tell you that they set their own case back years by their behaviour early on, and then they changed and realised, well, these are the people we want facilitating the groups. Those are the guys that are coming into the group, and they're not going to talk down to you. They're not going to, say, oh, well, get over it and move on. And, they know that it's difficult. They totally sympathise, but they also will kind of help people approach it in a way that's moving forward,
And how important is it, do you think, to sit amongst your peers in that respect?
Oh, that's the core for me.
That's it.
That is everything. Yeah, yeah. It's all about peer support. And like I say, I don't for a second discount other professionals, but that's not what our organisation is about. You're not going to be sitting in a room with somebody who's going to analyse you and then tell you what you should do, and critique your mental state or your therapeutic approach to your case. You're going to talk to people who maybe have been through it or maybe been through something similar. You're going to talk to people who have already tried what you're trying and maybe found a better way. You're going to talk to people who would challenge you and go, well, okay, I can see why you would think that, but is that actually going to give you a good result? And then you stop and go, oh. So these are the people that we want facilitating the groups.
And so at the moment, I see that you've got online support groups most days of the week, actually, including Sunday, which I think is fantastic. And my understanding is that anyone from Australia can link in with those online groups. Can you talk us through, or the listeners through, what happens in the online setting and how that might differ?
Yeah, for sure.
Just particularly, I guess, in case, Phil, people have a bit of hesitation or reservations about it.
It's funny, when we started doing the online thing 2 years ago, in response to lockdowns, almost 2 years ago, what we found, interestingly, was that some people love the online groups, and don't like walking into a room with a bunch of strangers to talk about these things, find that quite uncomfortable. And other people love the support of a Dads in Distress peer support group, the feeling of walking into that room and being surrounded by people who get you, but they don't want to talk about it online. And we have very few people who want to do both. So you may be somebody who just likes the physical groups, or you may be somebody who just likes the online groups, but they are essentially the same. We run the same process, we use the same facilitators, the same training, same concepts, same values, same format. So they are exactly the same. We're a national organisation, so the online groups, if you're not in a metro or you don't have access to a physical group near you, then you're stuck with having to choose between an online group or nothing. And we try and open up the physical groups wherever we can, where we've got demand and where we've got appropriate trained facilitators and volunteers. But yeah, so we run the online dads groups most days of the week. We run a mums group every Tuesday evening, and we run a grandparents in distress group every Wednesday evening.
I saw that. So the online meetings for mums, the separate mums group and the separate grandparents group as well, which is really excellent.
And they're exactly the same. They're the same format, same type of support. It's all about peers, run by peers.
Practical solutions. One of the questions we've had from Tom is, how would someone go about setting up a in-person group where there's not already that established? And is that something that they could contact you about with your contact details on the website, or can you talk us through how that would happen?
Yeah, for sure. Look, absolutely. Yes. If we have somebody who is keen, dedicated, and is willing to, work within our values, then, Orange, Central, Western. Yep, gotcha. Thanks, Tom. We're keen. Yeah, we really are. So the first thing to do is just go onto our website at parentsbeyondbreakup.com and click volunteers. Fill out the form. That will come to me. I manage the groups and the volunteers, and we'll start the conversation. We'll go through the process of probably getting you into some of the online meetings, or if you are able to travel to any of the physical meetings, that's fine too. So yeah, volunteer. There you go.
There we go. Look at that technology.
Wow,
It's good when it works, isn't it?
You've got some professionals in the background there. I'm loving this.
It could all be me, Phil. I think the only thing, I'm just mindful of the time, and I'm just looking over my notes, which I did handwrite because we did have technical issues at the outset with my printer. What's the most important piece of advice you'd give, Phil, to any parent going through separation? So not specifically dads, I guess, but any parent.
Yeah. Look, it really is peer support. I can't be any more plain than that. Is and I'm a little bit biased because I live for this. I love this. This is what turned my life around twice. Actually, really made a huge difference to me. Peer support. Talk to people who have been in or have gone through or are going through the same or similar situation to yourself. Now, and that doesn't have to be us. That can maybe somebody who has already been through a similar separation or trials and tribulations that you're facing. But don't put it all in the hands of experts. Don't listen to people who are well-intentioned and have good ideas. The one thing I hear all the time is people coming into the group who've maybe been going through the process for some time, and they're like, oh, my family were really supportive, but they made me do this, and they said I should do that, and I should take this legal action, or I should, whatever. And they're like, and it really messed me up. And you go, well, why would you take advice from somebody who you wouldn't go to voluntarily for advice, right? Somebody who doesn't know what you're facing.
Well, it goes back to that Dr. Seuss quote again, doesn't it? That every matter is unique. And I think these family and friends, certainly well-meaning, but I just think people need to be really careful about that.
They really do. And look, use your family and friends for support by all means, but support and advice are two different things. So you don't, we always say we don't give advice, and we don't. We offer opinions, perspective, wisdom, lived experience, and you take out of that what you want. We're not, we're not giving people advice. So I would just be wary of anybody, telling you what's best for you.
And I think it is well-meaning. We've just had a question from Nigel asking if there's a South Australian group.
No, nothing at the moment, Nigel. But if you or anybody who would be a good candidate, jump on that volunteer thing and put your details in, and we'll be in contact.
And of course, the online group's open nationwide, isn't it? So I think, is there a meeting tonight? I think there is.
Yes. There sure is. There's a meeting most nights of the week. I think we've got one running Monday through Friday, and then Sunday. So Saturday night is the only one we don't have any kind of support group, I think, running. The dads, there's several every week. And of course there's the National Helpline, which is available for 8:30 till 5. 6 days a week, Monday to Saturday. And,
I might pop that in the comments. I think it's 1300 853 437. Can you talk through briefly what about the helpline?
Yeah, of course. So our helpline is, like I say, it's manned 8:30 till 5, Monday to Saturday, and it is quite literally manned. I should say staffed, but they are all dads in distress, or ex-dads in distress, or group facilitators that man our phones. But the phone line is open to mums in distress, grandparents in distress, even the family and friends and supporters of parents going through these breakups and separations. And any professionals that want to find out a bit more about what we do. These guys, they're not there just for the dads. They are there for everybody.
And they're all volunteers, aren't they? It's all non-profit.
No, the helpline are actually they're trained professionals, and they are staff.
Okay. Yeah, good.
Many of them, in fact, all of them also volunteer for us.
Right.
So they also perform or have been group facilitators on a voluntary basis in the past. All of them actually. So they've all given plenty of their time and expertise to us just through their own, passion for the cause, but in their roles as helpline support people, they're trained professionals. Yeah.
And that's a great service to have on, like a Friday evening and a Saturday as well, where other support services may not be available. That's really good to keep that in mind.
Yep, we're there, and if you don't get picked up, somebody will always call you back. Always, we don't have a lot of staff and resources, so bear with us, but we will always get back in contact with you.
All right, Phil. Well, I think we'll wrap things up. Is there anything that you want to say in closing, or?
Yes, I would just like to say thank you, and please buy Shaya's book. Like, there is so much there that is not.
Well, this isn't about my book. This is about dads in distress.
I know, but look, this is why I wanted to talk to you, because there's so much in there that encourages people to seek more than just legal advice. You talk about what the distress that's involved in separation and how to get additional support, what your lawyer is there for, what they're not for, how to save money, all these kinds of things. And this is stuff that I see as being huge value to the people that we speak to, the people that we work with, our clients. So, that's why I was really excited about this. I think we're on the same page. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. And thanks for your time, Phil, and offering your time today. And hopefully the guys watching and everyone watching that might be supporting a male family member or friend going through separation is not shy to pick up the phone and either call the helpline or just jump online to a group. Might even be tonight. So thanks so much for your time. We'll wrap things up. And for those people who we didn't get to your questions, we will answer them privately. But yeah, really appreciate everyone tuning in, and thanks again, Phil.
Thanks, Shaya. Take care, everyone.
Okay, chat to you next time. Bye for now.